When talking about the NBA's elite point guards of the 90s, the first guys who come to mind are John Stockton, Tim Hardaway, and Mark Jackson. And with good reason. Those guys were the premier floor generals during the NBA's golden age, a time when the league was turning into a global phenomenon. But someone who often gets lost in the shuffle is Kevin Johnson, a Sacramento native who turned into one of the NBA's most exciting players pretty much overnight. It's a shame that KJ isn't mentioned more frequently, and if I had to guess, it would be because he had a relatively short career and an even shorter peak when compared to some of his contemporaries. While Johnson rose to stardom quite rapidly, he called it quits after 11 full seasons. It was technically 12, but we'll get to that in a little bit. And furthermore, there wasn't this extended fall from grace. There weren't many years where he just was competing as a shell of himself. No, Kevin Johnson had one forgettable season and then decided to hang them up immediately after. The city's future mayor was born on March 4th, 1966, and raised under the watchful eyes of his grandparents, George and Georgia. In his youth, Johnson emerged as a gifted athlete with an insatiable appetite for competition, which was instilled in him at a young age by his grandparents. George taught his grandson how to play chess, and Georgia taught him how to speed skate, the latter of which he excelled in. Johnson, as a kid, traveled to multiple states and won a handful of meets as a speed skater, and even went on to compete in the nationals twice. As Johnson matured, he shifted his focus to baseball and basketball. Of course, he was stellar in both. As a senior at Sacramento High School, he was ranked the #1 baseball prospect in the country, and he finished basketball season as the state of California's leading scorer with 32.5 points per game. When it came time to field offers, Johnson was looking for the 3 Ps: proximity, Pac-10, and prestige. He described the process with NBA journalist Jeremy McPeak when the two sat down together in 1995. Since school needed to be close to home, competitive athletically, which is why he settled on the Pac-10, and renowned academically. Despite having offers from Arizona, Oregon, and Washington State, Johnson settled on UC Berkeley because it was the only school that matched all of his criteria. Kevin Johnson joined the team for the 1983-84 season, where he posted just under 10 points and a little bit more than 2 assists. In year 2, Johnson made slight improvements but didn't begin garnering national attention until his junior year. Despite butting heads with new head coach Lou Campanelli, he set career highs in scoring and assists. It was also during that season that Cal downed their in-state rival UCLA, something that hadn't happened in 25 years. Additionally, Johnson's strong play lifted Cal to the NIT tournament, and it was their first postseason appearance in 26 seasons. He was also named to the All-Pac-10 first team. In his final collegiate campaign, Johnson averaged 17 points and 5 assists and recorded the first triple-double in Pac-10 history, which cemented him as a versatile and explosive guard. Additionally, he excelled as a defender and even managed to add a reliable 3-point shot into his repertoire. Johnson ended his career at Cal as the team leader in assists, points, and steals. Although new faces have come in and usurped Johnson in the rankings, he still lands in the top 10 in those, plus a litany of other categories. As he developed over those 4 years, NBA executives became enamored with Kevin Johnson, and he was arguably the best point guard in the class, right up there with UNC's Kenny Smith. Overall, the 1987 draft class was decent. David Robinson was the first guy off the board, followed by Armin Gilliam and Dennis Hobson. At 4th and 5th, you had Reggie Lewis and Scottie Pippen, respectively. Now, picking 6th was the Sacramento Kings, and they had a chance to bring Kevin Johnson back to his hometown. Unfortunately, it didn't pan out that way, and they went ahead and selected Kenny Smith, which allowed Kevin Johnson to fall to the Cleveland Cavaliers. It's unclear as to why Cleveland, who had selected Mark Price the year prior to play point guard, would go ahead and pick Kevin Johnson. There are only 2 possible reasonings for this, the first being that they were just looking for talent and not necessarily fit, and the second being that they thought that maybe Kevin Johnson would help push Mark Price to be a better version of himself. As you might expect, Price consistently outplayed Kevin Johnson throughout his rookie season, finishing with averages of 16 points and 6 assists. However, Johnson didn't even spend the entirety of the season with Cleveland. After just 52 games, they decided to ship him off to the Phoenix Suns in a deal that saw 4 picks and 5 players get swapped. Once settled in the Valley, KJ began seeing considerably more playing time, which allowed him to put up more impressive numbers. And in the final 20 or so games with the Phoenix Suns, he posted averages of 12.6 points and 8.7 assists. Johnson returned to Phoenix in year 2 as not only the Suns' franchise point guard, but their franchise centerpiece, and he immediately started torching the league. Johnson turned into an elite point guard practically overnight, and he went on to finish 3rd overall in the NBA that season in assists per game with 12.2, and then he also went ahead and added 20 points and nearly 2 steals to his stat line. That combination of points and assists put Kevin Johnson in elite company as he became just the 3rd player to accomplish that feat, joining Magic Johnson and Isaiah Thomas. Interestingly enough, Johnson's stellar season did not earn him an All-Star appearance, but he did manage to land on the All-NBA second team while also bringing home the Most Improved Player award. On top of all of it, he even garnered a couple MVP votes. Phoenix qualified for the postseason, and Johnson was magical in every series, but unfortunately, their campaign came to an end at the hands of the Los Angeles Lakers in the Western Conference Finals. The 2 subsequent seasons saw Johnson elevate his play by a few notches. He remained a lethal passer, finishing with nearly 11 assists across those both seasons, but he made some pretty decent strides as a scorer, elevating his average up to 22.4. He went ahead and earned his first 2 All-Star appearances and also landed on the All-NBA second team for both years. In 1990, the first of that 2-year run, the Suns managed to get to the Western Conference Finals after advancing past the Jazz and the Lakers. However, in 1991, the team experienced an uncharacteristically early exit in a rematch against the Utah Jazz. A key ingredient in Phoenix getting bounced by Utah was that Kevin Johnson, for the first time in his career, looked human. He averaged just 12.8 points on a nauseous shooting clip of 30.2%, and he couldn't even find a rhythm from the free throw line, where he connected on just 60% of his attempts. On the heels of that disappointing playoff showing, Kevin Johnson returned to being a walking double-double, this time finishing just shy of averaging 20 points and 11 assists across 78 regular season contests. While those marks rose to 23.6 and 11.6 respectively, Phoenix again got bounced in the second round. While those Suns teams of the early 90s were terrific, they never realized their full potential as contenders. While Kevin Johnson was a bona fide star, there wasn't anybody on the team that was at the same caliber as him, and that expedited their rise to their ceiling. In order to break through that ceiling and become legitimate contenders in a loaded Western Conference, they had to go out and acquire a star. And they did so by bringing in Charles Barkley. In June of 1992, a 29-year-old Barkley got sent from Philadelphia to Phoenix for a package that was centered around Jeff Hornacek. And the Barkley-Johnson duo was lethal. Almost immediately, and in their first season together, they won a still-standing franchise record of 62 games. Barkley was especially outstanding and brought home his first and only MVP award that season after averaging nearly 26 points a game to go along with 12 rebounds and 5 assists. Unexpectedly, the addition of Barkley would take away some touches from Johnson on the offensive end, but I don't think anyone expected it to be as sizable as it was. Johnson, who had previously averaged about 20 points and 10 assists, had been reduced to 16 points and 8 assists. And although Barkley's addition, again, did play a role, he largely fell off because he just started to experience a rash of seemingly freak injuries. After staying mostly healthy since coming into the NBA, Johnson was limited to 49 games during the 92-93 season. All of this stemmed from a hernia, which he had developed after attempting to lift 280-pound rookie Oliver Miller during a preseason game. That hernia, however, went undiagnosed for 4 years until 1996, and this caused all of the pain in Johnson's groin, his knees, his hips. All of these lower body ailments stemmed from this hernia, and in total, he missed 109 games during the 4 years that him and Charles Barkley were teammates. To Johnson's credit, however, he was always around for the postseason. Didn't miss a single postseason game, and this includes Phoenix's run to the finals in 1993. He suited up for 23 games that postseason, including the 6 against the Chicago Bulls. And while Phoenix fought valiantly, the Michael Jordan, Scottie Pippen Bulls were just too much for them to handle, and they wound up being eliminated in the NBA Finals. Despite being in and out of the lineups so frequently, Johnson was able to bounce back and began posting numbers that were nearly identical to his career averages. Additionally, he continued to perform well throughout the postseason, and in 1994 and 1995 across 20 games averaged about 26 points and just under 10 assists. Unfortunately, the Suns fell at the hands of the Houston Rockets in both 94 and 95. As I just mentioned, Johnson's hernia didn't get treated until 1990. Well, I don't want to say it didn't get treated. It didn't get discovered until the fall of 1996, and he went in to have surgery to repair it. And while he was under the knife, doctors found a second sports hernia that undeniably amplified everything, all the pain, all the grief, everything that Kevin Johnson was feeling throughout those previous 4 seasons. Following the surgery, Johnson was healthy just in time for the start of the season and appeared to be fully healthy for the first time in about 5 years. However, that Phoenix Suns team that he was a part of struggled mightily and had their first losing season for the first time in nearly a decade. 1 year removed from his operation, Johnson mentally prepared himself for what would be his final NBA season. He sat down with NBA reporter Jeremy McPeak and said that he was, quote unquote, definitely retiring at the conclusion of the upcoming season. The biggest factor in his decision to call it quits? His health. The 97-98 Suns bounced back miraculously from that dreadful season they had posted the previous season and went on to win 56 games. And I use the term or the word miraculously because on paper, this Suns team was not that great. Johnson posted less than 10 points and fewer than 5 assists. The worst season of his career. Moreover, the team's leading scorer was Rex Chapman at 15.9. Even though Phoenix qualified for the playoffs, they got bounced rather quickly by the Spurs in the first round. After that season, Johnson followed through on his retirement plans and hung up his sneakers after just 11 seasons. Johnson, however, didn't stay retired for that long as he was coaxed into joining the Suns for their playoff run in 2000, a run that lasted all of 9 games. Once the postseason had concluded, Johnson officially called it quits. The Phoenix Suns are lucky to have had a handful of elite point guards travel through their organization, but none of them, with the exception of Steve Nash, of course, compare to Kevin Johnson. During his peak, from 1989 to 1995, the Suns accumulated 394 victories, the most in the NBA over that span. More than the Bulls, more than the Jazz, more than the Supersonics, more than the Lakers. They were the winningest team for that 6-year run. Furthermore, Johnson is still the franchise's single season record holder for assists and assists per game. He's also in the top 10 in a slew of other categories, pretty much every other major category like games played, minutes played, field goals made, assists, steals, points, you name it, he's probably in the top 10. Lastly, Johnson's career assists per game mark of 9.1 remains the 6th highest mark in NBA history. I don't think that Kevin Johnson will ever be inducted into the NBA Hall of Fame. While his numbers are incredible, they're fantastic, they're all of the positive superlatives, his career and his peak, more impactfully, they were just too short. However, with all of that said, Kevin Johnson, as far as talent goes, is one of the best and most exciting point guards the NBA has ever seen. And I just hope that at some point, the title of Kevin Johnson being the most underrated point guard in NBA history changes. As always, thank you guys so much for coming to hang out with me today. If you're a first-time viewer, welcome. If you're a returning viewer, welcome back. Everything that I'm associated with is down in the description below. That's social medias, that's the podcast that I host, which is available on iTunes and on Spotify and pretty much wherever podcasts are hosted. Also, if you liked the video, go ahead, leave it a like. If you didn't like the video, go ahead and dislike it and subscribe and turn the notification bell on if you want to see more content like this. Again, thank you guys so much. And as always, I'll catch you in the next one.